Okay. Hello, welcome to another live stream. Today we're going to be doing something a little bit different. So since I tried getting to 2300 and it's giving me a little bit of tough time, I'm going to just start studying and then let's see how we're going to get back to it. So I'm going to start we're going to be doing a lot of study on the Caro-Kann. But we're not actually going to be studying openings per se. We're going to be studying games of different grandmasters and tournaments, and then see how we can learn from the game and pick up different strategies, or see how they also play the game, get to learn their ideas, and hopefully it's going to help out a lot. Now we're going to look at this game right here. It's a Caro-Kann game. Let me see if I can flip the board. Alright, so hope you got your pen and book because we're going to be doing lots of analysis, and I'm also going to be showing you how I actually do my analysis. So if you're a GM and you're watching this and I'm doing something wrong, you can just let me know, and then I'm going to correct it. Okay. All right. So let me flip the board since we're going to be studying as black. So e4 was played. Normally how I do it is I already know from, let's say, probably from 1 to 10. So we start doing intense analysis from like move 10. So from move 10 we're going to now see we're going to start looking at, let's say, different possibilities, different options or alternatives that, let's say, black will have played. Even if the option you picked is what, let's say, the person played, you can still look for other alternatives, as there will always be at least 3 possible moves in every position. So let's see how that is going to go. Drop my pen. Yeah. Now e4 was played. E4, yeah, definitely Caro-Kann. So we expect e4, then c6, right? E4, c6, and then yeah, d4. I'm guessing d5, d5, then knight to c3, and then d times e4. Then knight times e4. So knight times e4 and knight to f6. So now in this position, I usually almost always never play this. So that's why I'm actually trying to study it. So I'm trying to study knight to f6 to see like what can happen. Instead of, I usually go bishop to f5. So in this analysis, we're going to be looking at knight to f6 instead. So after knight to f6, I'm guessing he captured. Yeah. So knight captures, knight takes on f6. I'll also paste the PGN of the game in the description later on if you want to look at the game, like personally. So knight takes f6 check. Then usually there are 2 different ways to capture, either with this or this. So let's see what. Okay, so g times f6. So g times f6. Now the computer is not like fully in support of this position, but people like Nf6, I've analyzed a lot of games of Nf6 I think a few days back, and Nf6 played like this particular variation a lot of times instead of e times f6. I don't know why, because I just feel like this is not very as good as the other one, because now this creates like 3 major pawn islands and you have an isolated pawn. So if you don't play very aggressively in this position, you might end up having a problem, right? And you definitely do not want to exchange pieces in this kind of pawn, like having this kind of pawn structure, unless let's say you kind of fix it, or maybe you also cause the same problem for white. So let's see what is going to eventually happen. So 6, bishop, yeah, just develop into castle, I guess. So bishop to c4, bishop f5, right? Bishop f5, and knight to f3, knight to d7, knight to d7, and then knight to h4, knight h4. So we're almost approaching move 10. So yeah, then bishop goes to g6. The bishop goes to g6. So all the moves are just like simple moves, right? In this position, right, so develop the bishop, develop the knight. He's probably thinking of castling long. Yeah, he can't definitely castle short because his king side is already open. So that's why he's trying to develop his queen side pieces. That's what I think, actually. So definitely the bishop has to move to safety. So bishop to g6, bishop to f4, right? Bishop to f4, and then pawn to e6. So e6, then we've gotten to move 10. So since we're studying as black, we're only going to be looking at like in every position we're going to try and be looking like at least 3 possible moves that the black can play. So let's see. So after e6, castle 0-0, then knight to b6. Now, so knight to b6, right? So in this position, aside knight to b6, what other moves can, let's say, what other moves can black play? So I'm seeing aside knight to b6, so like we're going to look for 2 moves then, because probably I was not supposed to move it, but let's see. So knight to b6, we could develop the bishop. No, we could develop the queen. We are looking to castle, so probably like queen to b6 also is an option, right? I'm just going to write that down as like other options that we could have gone, and when we're done analyzing, then we're going to see if our like prediction was correct or if our analysis was correct. Give me a second. This is a second. Into okay. So like I said, in this position, queen can go to b6, right, instead of knight b6, and what are the options? Those are the only 2 moves that are coming to my mind. Yeah, I would have said maybe we fianchetto the bishop, but I think the bishop on f8 is doing okay there. So let's see. We have to look for 3 no matter what. In every position, we have to look for at least 3 moves no matter what. So let's see. So either queen to b6, right? So queen b6, knight c6, sorry, knight to b6 also. Knight to b6, I can see the reason for knight to b6, probably because we want to go bishop to d6, and still, yeah, bishop to d6, and if we exchange queen takes, then we can eventually castle, right? So, but what will be the last move? Queen to a5. Queen to a5 looks okay. Still having the idea of castling, and maybe even bringing the queen all the way to, let's say, h5 to do something, not anything much though, or maybe to join an attack. So let's just write queen a5. So queen b6 or queen a5. queen b6 or queen a5. Now those are the three moves. So queen, first we looked at queen to b6, next we looked at knight to b6, and then that. So he played knight to b6, and we said probably the reason why is because he wants to just develop and then castle short. So after this, knight to b6, after knight to b6, white played bishop back. Definitely either has to save the bishop or protect by moving the queen. Definitely he's not going to want to protect with the pawn because it's going to make his pawn structure a little bit messy. So bishop all the way back to b3, and it's black's turn to play now. Now black can, yeah, I think black can still go ahead with going either bishop to, so I'm going to write down the alternative moves. So bishop to d3, bishop to d6, I mean, sorry. So bishop to d6, attacking the bishop and just trying to develop at the same time. So bishop to d6, if it doesn't do anything, then queen can go to c7, still putting pressure on this diagonal. Or let's say bishop d6, so I say queen to d7. Queen to d7, still trying to castle. Well, is castling really important? Okay, knight, so I'm saying knight to d5 also. So bishop to d6, knight to d5, right? Bringing the knights to the center of the board here, right? Knight to d5, and lastly, bishop to d6, knight to d5, and okay, I said queen to d7, so we can castle. And I don't see that as like a bad idea. We don't want to play f5, right? We don't want to push this pawn because now we are like limiting the bishop. The bishop is definitely going to be captured by the knight eventually, so there's no need to attack. So yeah, so queen to d7 will be the last. Queen to d7. So either bishop to d6, queen to d7, or knight to d5. Let's see what he played. Yeah, definitely bishop to d6. So bishop d6, and then move 12. Yeah, he protected with the queen. Queen to f3. Queen to f3. We could take, because I can, like, we could either take with the bishop or go to c7. But it still ends up the same way. Going to c7, bishop takes, queen takes, so takes, then queen takes, then we, okay. But I think bishop to c7 looks more decent. Yeah, I think queen to c7. So queen to c7 will be my first option. Queen to c7. So queen to c7, that's bringing the queen here, double attacking the bishop. Or I still like, no, I don't want going knight to d5, because knight to d5, if he takes with his bishop, then we either take with the c pawn or with the e pawn. We don't want to take with the e pawn because we're going to have to, like, yeah, we're going to have very bad pawn structure. Even though, yeah, we're going to have a bad pawn structure if we take with the e pawn and we open up the center and we haven't castled. So that is going to be very, 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 very bad for us. So instead of going knight to d5 is out of the option. And if we take with the c pawn, if we take with the c pawn, our idea of now trying to castle is going to be cancelled. So either queen to c7 or queen to d7. Now, mind you, I've not done an analysis on this position, so I have what was the name? I'm not sure if the moves are good or moves are bad. So the thing is that we're just trying to look at the ideas, and after we've looked at the ideas, and this is something that you're supposed to always do before you play a game, right? Sorry, before like immediately after a game, you're supposed to do your own personal analysis, right? Most of us don't, even I myself, I actually don't like doing this, and I actually don't do it a lot of times. But if you can do this a lot of times, like just trying to look for ideas, you're going to eventually say, oh, so why was this move wrong? Why was this move right? Why was this move wrong? And eventually it's going to help your chess very, very well. So so we're going to write down either queen to c7, trying to double attack the bishop, or queen to d7, just trying to go about castling. Queen to d7, and we need one more move. queen to d7. Remember, has to be at least 3 moves in every position. Next move. Also, if you have suggestions, you can type it in the chat. If you have suggestions on any position, then you can type it in the chat, and let's see what we are missing. So probably rook to g. Yeah, so that if the knight takes, then the rook can take instead of the pawn. So I'm going to also suggest rook to g8. It's not going to be a blunder. It's just maybe might be an inaccuracy, but rook to g8. Rook g8. I have to look for a move. So that is the only normal move that I'm seeing in this position. So let's see. Okay, yeah, bishop captures. Okay. Oh yeah, I bishop captures. Yeah, I forgot to add that also. I think I missed it. But I thought I looked at it also. This is okay. Bishop captures. Bishop times bishop x f4. Now it's not part of the moves I wrote here. I wrote queen to c7, queen d7, or rook to g8. So we're going to also check it to see if our ideas were also okay. And then let's see if it's wrong. Then we get to find out why the moves were wrong. Right. So we're at move 12. Let's see move 13. Yeah, it's definitely going to capture. So queen times queen x f4. Now it's black's turn to play. Queen x f4. Okay, now he can go knight to d5 because knight d5. Bishop takes, then queen takes. But no. Okay, moving the queen out of this. Yeah, we're going to lose this pawn. So this pawn now is being attacked by the queen. We need to take note of that, right? We need to take note of that. So this is why you need to look for at least 3 moves in every position, because if you just, okay, queen here, sorry, knight here, and then your idea, knight here might still, okay, you might have seen that you lose this pawn, so you're going to have to capture with this pawn, and then you eventually have your king in the center. Or even if you castle, okay, we can still castle in this position. Actually, castling is an idea, actually, short instead of long, because I even feel like castling long is going to bring, like, Google a4, a5, and then a6, then starting causing lots of trouble. So I think maybe castling is good. Right? Castling short is one option, 0-0. Another option is still trying to castle long. Yeah, knight d5 is out of the option. So 0-0. I'm still looking for another move. Okay, queen to d7 now. Queen to d7. So queen to d7. Trying to castle long. And then lastly, yeah, we don't want to even touch the h pawn, because if we touch the h pawn, we're going to lose a pawn on e6. Because knight takes bishop, then if pawn on f takes, pawn on f is protecting the pawn on e6, and then we lose a pawn. So what good move? So okay, so queen to d7. So if we're not going to castle, if we're not thinking of castling long, right, we could go a5. We could go a5, a6. For a5, he just probably plays a4 or a3. Yeah, we just need to look for one more move. Let's not waste much time. So I'm just going to put on I'm just optimistic that it's probably going to be 0-0 or queen to c7 or queen. Okay, no, queen to d7 is even cancelled. Sorry, I take that back. Queen to d7 loses the pawn on f6. Queen to d7 loses the pawn on f6. So instead of queen to d7, yeah, we can't move the queen. That means, so cancelling. So instead of queen to d7, maybe queen to e7 then, right? Queen to e7 is still funny. I feel like his next move is going to be c4. So queen to e7, or 0-0, queen to e7, or rook. Okay. We could go knight to D. It's not doing anything. So let's just leave queen to E7 and 0 hyphen 0. Well, let's write one more move. So the last candidate move is going to be still the move that I said. Okay, rook to G8, rook to G8, rook to G8. All right, let's see what he played. What? Okay, so he played knight to D5. Knight to D5, knight to D5. Interesting. Now, I have a problem with this position, and when I'm doing the analysis, I'm going to definitely check whether this one was good. Rook to knight. Okay, it's probably going to take, if white doesn't take that, that means I was seeing it wrongly. That means there was probably something I was missing. So move 14. Give me a second. Okay. Yeah. So he played the move that we were not expecting, knight to D5. Knight to D5. All right, so let's see what he played. Queen. I knew there was something wrong with this move. Queen to H6. Queen to H6. Now after queen to H6, this definitely is going to stop black from. Why didn't white take? Confused. Okay. Now black can't castle long. Sorry, short. Black can't castle short, and that's why he played the move. So that's why castling was also part of the moves. Now, if he had castled, this wouldn't have happened. Because if he castled, even if he takes with the knight, the bishop, right, then pawn on H takes, and he's safe because white doesn't have a dark square bishop. Okay. So what are the top 3 candidate moves for black here? I still think going rook to G8. Now that black can castle. Okay, now let's see. So queen to D6. Queen to D6 is one move. Queen to C7, just trying to castle. So if the no. Yeah, I don't like black's position now. So queen to D6 or queen to E7 are the 2 moves I'm looking at. Queen to E7, right? Bringing the queen all the way to D6 or bringing the queen to E7. Yeah. Or maybe queen to B6 with a tempo. Well, okay. So if definitely one is I feel like queen to D6 D7 is even wrong, because queen to D7 he attacks the rook, right? He attacks the rook. Let's assume we castle, then he takes the knight. If we take, then we lose this pawn. So queen to D7 is going to be a blunder, right? I just don't worry, we're going to do a full analysis after the game. So yeah, so after D6 D7, we're going to lose this pawn over here because of that. And if we don't lose the pawn, what if, okay, I feel like in this position he can even play king to probably like D5, sorry, D7, king to D7. So it's just I don't know why black played knight to D5. Strongly against the move. So let's say queen to C7, queen to B6. No, queen to B6, C7 is out of the equation. Now we know that we only have one good square for the queen. I'm not seeing any counter attack, so which just only one good square for the queen. And then we could go rook to G, but I'm afraid. Okay, yeah, rook to G8 is going to be rook G8. So let's see what he played without wasting much time. Yeah, Queen to E7. Yeah, I saw that. I was able to saw what I was able to see that. I was able to see that. I was able to see that Queen to D7 and D6 will have been an inaccuracy, which I feel like a lot of people, or maybe some of you viewing now, will have missed it. The Queen to, this is the only right square for the Queen. Any other square is going to be bad. And if we attack the rook, then we can castle long. So Queen to E7. This was my second candidate move. So let's go on to move 15. Move 15. What happened? Yeah, I knew. Yeah, remember when I said I knew C4 was going to be his next move? So C4. Okay, that was not this position, which was before he went to Queen to H6. So C4 was what he played. So after C4, yeah, we definitely have to move the knight. This is a forcing move, so I'm going to be limited, but I'm still going to try and look for other possibilities, because in this position you can play a counter. Okay, no, there's no counter aggressive move. Moving the knight C7, knight B6, right? So let's just write knight C7, knight B6. Let's look for grandmaster move. We have to find 3 moves. So, but yeah, definitely not attacking the rook. Definitely not. I'm not seeing what of knight to B4. Knight B4 looks okay, but I don't see the destination of where the knight is going to result to after that. So those are going to be my 2 moves, because this is the forcing move. Let's see what black played. We definitely can't castle in this position. So yeah, knight C7. Yeah, knight C7 was the first option I wrote. Knight C7, and let's see, move 16. Yeah, he took the bishop. Now we have to take with our F1. This is F4. Okay. We take with the F1, and our pawn structure is now okay. Interesting. Was this a very good move from white? I doubt. So knight F4. So knight G6. Knight G6. Knight takes on G6. And what are we going to play now? Knight takes G6. Definitely it's a forcing move, so we can't capture with the H pawn. So I might not sit on this one for too long. So let's say F times F takes knight. Okay, so Fx G6, right? Now 16 move 17, right? Just to show you what I'm doing. This is exactly what I'm doing. Just writing all the possible things that can happen. Okay, so move 17, right? Okay. All right. So move 17. Sorry. He played pawn to D5. D5. Move 17. Played pawn to D5. What are we going to play now? We can capture 2. Okay, one way. No, 2 ways. One way. We can't capture with E pawn because our king is still in the center. We can choose to ignore and just castle, but we cannot pin. What if we just takes? It does that. What if we push the pawn forward and then castle? Okay, so the first option I'm looking at is C times, right? That's definitely the first option I'm going to look at. So C takes, if C takes D5, C takes the D5, or definitely pawn E5 is going to be back. So C takes D5 is the only. Okay, besides that, we have pawn to E5. Just going up with the pawn to E5, right? Well, my strong suggestion is pawn C takes, or we just castle here. Yeah, we can still castle here. I think that's okay. if he pins the pawn, then we just play e5. I think that still works. Yeah. So castling is what happened. So that was my last among the candidate moves. Well, that was what we played. So 0-0. Then let's go on to move 18. Move 18. What happened in move 18? He took the pawn, definitely. He's going to take the pawn. And now we're getting into an end game. And what you want to try and look at is how your pawn structures are set while you're getting almost close to an end game. So pawn takes c6. Yeah. Bx c6, then bx c6. Then move 19. Black played queen to e3. Queen e3, right? Now queen to e3, attacking the pawn. So definitely the first thing they're going to try to look at is how to protect the pawn. A7, well, he probably might still be trying to do another thing that we have to look at. So what are the moves that are here? We can protect the pawn by moving the king. We can protect the pawn by moving the pawn. We can protect the pawn by moving the knights, because the queen is going to also be looking at a4, right? So let's say, okay, so the three candidate moves that we have in this position are king to b8, king b8. I wouldn't want to go to a light square. It might not be bad actually, but with king to b8, I see knight to a, right? Knight to a and then knight to c. Looks okay. And it stops him from pushing the pawn actually. So knight to a6. I don't want to go knight to e because he could attack. Okay, yeah, knight to e, e8 backwards. Let's just go knight to a6. Knight a6, and then we need one more move. King to b, attacking, protecting both pawns. Well, let's just go knight to e8. Knight to e8 can go to d6, and then can probably do some things there. So knight to e8 also. Whoa. Okay. So all the moves that we even tried looking at was not even among. So okay, that took us by surprise. C5. C5 is what happened. So yeah, so c5. C5. Okay. Now black attacked the rook. Rook on a to d1. Rook on a to d1. The first option is obviously going to be trying to exchange, right? So rook times, and then if he takes, we also go rook to d8. What the question is, do we want to exchange our rooks completely? Do we want to do an exchange completely? So another option is, okay, no, I don't want. Okay, we can play pawn to e5, but I feel like going pawn to e5 is going to weaken this square. You can maybe maneuver and bring, okay, yeah, you can try and bring his bishop to that square, but we can actually just play this and yeah, and a lot of things. So well, let's not look into that yet. We're going to do other analysis later. So so rook takes is an option. Rook x d1, right? And I can say maybe rook to e8, but rook to e8, if he takes, yeah, we can take with the queen. No, queen, then he gets a tempo by attacking our queen with his rook. So rook to e8, but it's still an option to consider. Rook to e8 or pawn to f or pawn to e5. Okay, rook to e8. And then maybe e5. Position is a little bit okay. There are a lot of good moves that looks good. We can actually play this or take, but we need a move that actually does something to our position, not just any kind of move. That's the major thing. So I'm looking at rook takes, and then just trying to go into an end game, bishop versus knight end game, and queen. Okay, there's no waste time, so I'm going to go with pawn to e5 for the last move, e5. And I know it might be bad because we're losing this square, but we're still, yeah, I know it might be bad, but I'm trying to get rid of the pawn weaknesses. So I want to like try and go pawn push, and then maybe somewhere here I just try and get rid of the pawn weakness. At least these 2 pawns could be attacked at any point, so we can just play this. I might be wrong, actually, I might be wrong. So but just, yeah, so pawn to e5. Whoa. That was the last move that I expected he would even play. I actually didn't even think he's going to play pawn to e5. Okay, just so you know, I'm not seeing the possible moves that can happen. I'm not seeing it. So so you wouldn't say I am seeing it, because this is crazy. This was the last move that I actually thought will happen, and that was actually what even happened. So pawn to e5. After pawn to e5, why pawn to e5? I was like very scared because the square on d5 is going to be a major weakness, but turns out it's totally fine. Right now, all we need to, oh, I see, is it actually gives way for the knight to go to e6, and then okay, yeah, I think that's definitely why. Knight to e6 and then knight to d4, and that is going to be a very, very good outpost for the knight. So I understand why that's good. So we're trying to, the reason e5 was played was just to go to e6 and then try to create a very good outpost for the knight. So now I get it. All right. Okay, so he goes pawn to f4, trying to do a break. Very understandable. 21. This is move 21. So pawn to f4. Pawn to f4. What if we just push the pawn again, like by going to e4? Or, because we can't actually even take the pawn, our queen is hanging, right? We can also just try to double up. But I feel like if we double up, he takes, we take with the pawn, we've given his rook an open file. So the first move that is on my mind is going pawn to e4, right? But I feel like if we go pawn to e4 again, he could play pawn to f5, and then we're going to still have a problem, but not a very big problem. Yeah, not a very big problem. But let's just write pawn to e5. So so after pawn to f4, trying to open up and liberate the rook. Rook is probably trying to. What if we, okay, if we take, he can take back with the bishop. He doesn't need to take that. Okay. So let's see. So rook takes d1 is an option. Still an option, right? And then pawn to e4 is an option, right? And pawn to I don't want rook to e8, but I see like that's the only move that makes sense. So rook to e8. Rook e8. Rook e8 looks. Rook e8 looks okay, I think. Yeah, rook e8 looks okay. So well, let's see what he played. Yes. Okay. So pawn to e4. That was the move that I actually will have gone with. So e4, and then move 22. I feel like he's going to play f5. I knew it. So I already knew that e4 was good, was a little bit good, but I was like, okay, what will happen if he goes f5 now? Because this pawn is a little bit weak. He can just double up, but I now realize that probably we could go this way eventually with the rook if he decides to like triple up on this pawn, right? And this knight is not going to just sit there doing nothing. So we're gonna have to look for a way for this knight to be eventually in the game, but it's going to take a lot of time, a lot of moves. Now the knight can't go here, but we can actually just consider taking at some point, right? So but now we mustn't take. I don't think taking is going to be a good idea. Just let him be, right? I'm seeing moves like okay, so he played f5. Yeah, this is why classical chess is hard, because you do a lot of thinking. Right now, I'm not even doing like, this is not even the intense thinking, but we're just doing an analysis on somebody else's games, not our games. And the major reason we're doing this is to try and get like ideas that we can also put into in our games. And after we've done this analysis, we're still going to come back to the analysis and try and see where he made the mistakes. But so far, I think the position is a little bit equal, right? I think the position is a little bit equal. Black maybe have a slight advantage because of this pass pawn that you have, and I think that's what he might use in the game. So but let's just see, because it's actually a very bold move playing this with the fear that you're not going to lose this. Because if it's me, before I play this move, I must have like very strong like confluences before I actually go for that move. So after pawn to f5, what should we play? So I'm still looking at rook e7. Oh, we can go queen. I'm thinking of queen to e4, e5. Yeah, so queen e5 is an option. The reason is because we're attacking the pawn on b. The reason is because we're attacking the pawn on b2, and we're also attacking the pawn on f5. So that now he either has to protect with a piece or encounter some issues and problems. Queen to e5. Thinking of coupling or like doubling up, joining the queen and the rook by going rook on h to e8. Like so, rook on h to e8 is another rook on h to e8. Rook on h to e8 is another option that we can go with. Aside rook on h to e8, we have pawn to g5, but yeah, pawn to g5 looks interesting. Pawn to g5 looks interesting. Why? Like instead of not taking, remember to take is a mistake, according to Igor Smirov. So pawn to g5, like we're just avoiding. Yeah, and not doing anything too aggressive, because I realize that even if we go queen to e5, we can't capture the pawn on b, because we're just going to open our kingside file also, and we're going to also lose the pawn on. We're also going to lose the pawn on c5. Now, hello, Dirt BC. Yeah, Dirt X BC. Okay. So let's see what you played. My moves were queen to e5, right? Going queen to e5 or rook on h to e8 or h5. I don't think capturing is going to be good. Yes. Okay. I'm not supposed to scream yes because I'm not supposed to scream yes because this move might be wrong, right? Because remember, this is a human being playing. This is also it's actually a grandmaster. I forgot its name. I just have like a lot of encyclopedia of like of games that have to do with this particular variation of the Caro-Kann. If you also want it, you can just drop your email and I can then send you the PGN files of all of the games and you're going to now have it. So let's see. Give me a second. I need to plug in my PC. All right. So yeah, so let's see. So this was the first move that came to my mind, and it was actually part of it. So let's see. Queen to e5 was what was played. Queen to e5. I'm guessing he's going to. That's not. Yeah. This is interesting. So he's This is interesting. Okay, so he goes queen to f5, move 23, queen to f5. No, queen to h3, sorry. Queen to h3. And after queen to h3, what is he going to play? Queen to h3. Now I can see that there's a discover check. So if the pawn captures on g6, there's going to be a discover check. So it's going to be bad. So the first move that came to my mind is moving the king away. But I now saw that also if you move the king away, then he could take the rook. If let's say you move the king to, let's say, b8, he could take this rook and he takes this rook, and then you lose this pawn because queen takes. Well, yeah, queen takes the pawn. So now it's either the only move I'm seeing is pawn to g5. Now I think black is forced to play pawn to g5. So that's going to be my first option, right? So let's write it down. G5, right? G5, and after G5, what other move is there? So G5, G5. If you have, what other move do you think I can play here? The rook takes is not. I don't think the rook takes is going to be good because he still has a tempo, and he can do a check, right? So that's not going to be part of it. G5. I think G5 is forced here because any other move is going to lead to a loss of, unless there's something I'm not seeing. So G5 looks forced here. Yep, G5 is what was played. G5. Yeah, I'm a genius. Yeah, I think I'm going to become a GM after this game. Okay, so move 24. So this is move 24. Move 24. G5. White plays rook. Definitely. What? Why is white giving black the open file? I would have preferred the other rook instead. Okay. So let's just ignore what black is playing. White is playing, but I feel like black is doing much more better in this position right now. Because going there, we actually even have rook to d3 now. No, rook to d3. Yeah. Yes, rook to d3. Yeah, rook to d3 is a move that can happen. So let's see, rook to e1. Rook to e1. And after rook to e1, our candidate moves are, I'm seeing just going rook d5. Right, sorry, rook d4. Right, rook d4, because I feel like if we go rook d3, it's going to attack. And we can also even go rook. Yeah, there are lots of squares we can go with our rook on the d file. It's hard to pick. So let's just pick the three best. Right. Our knight is not doing anything. Looking for a way to activate it, but I feel like going rook probably to, let's say, d3 and then trying to double up one, improve our position is going to be good. Rook to d3 is going to go rook to e, and then we can pin, and then he doubles up. Okay, yeah. Rook d3 is an option. Rook d4 is an option, and rook d2. Rook d2 is an option, but let's not try to focus on what's the name. Let's not try to focus on only one piece. The next move definitely has in mind is maybe doing bishop to c2. So that's why I'm thinking of going rook to d2. Well, if we're going to move another piece, maybe it's going to be pawn to h5, because that's what I'm looking at, pawn to h5, and then probably that move, the next move is going to trap the, not necessarily trap the queen, but maybe lead to a good position. We don't want to, we want to move the rook on h, probably like, let's say to e8, but we can't do that now because the pawn on h7 is going to be hanging. So let's see. So probably rook to d3. Rook to d3. Yeah. So but I've written all the moves: rook d3, rook d4, or rook d2. Yeah. Okay, he went with rook d2, and that was the last move that actually was part of my suggestion. So let's say rook d2. Hey Cody. welcome to the live. We're just doing a study on Caro-Kann, the Nf6 variation. So rook to d2. And what did white play? Move 25. So move 25. He played queen to d. I think it's going to be good here to exchange. Okay, no. Okay, yeah. Wait. What? Okay. Okay. So white played queen to c3. Queen to c3. And should we take? Taking is an option. Definitely taking is an option, because we double up his pawn structure, and we're going to technically be having a pass pawn. But the problem is, are we going to be good enough? Like, are we going to be well equipped to protect the pawn on e4? That's the major question. So, but let's see. So queen takes c3. Queen takes c3 is an option. Queen takes c3, right? And then I'm looking at now that the queen is no longer on h3, right? It's not going to attack the h7 pawn if we move our rook. So rook to e8 also is an option. Rook e8 is an option, and any other move that is here is not going to be good, I guess, right? Unless we have queen to d4 check. Queen to d4 check. If queen takes, then we can take with the rook. Well, I don't see how. Yeah, we can take with the rook. No, not queen to d4. Maybe rook goes back to d4 instead, but that would just be a waste of time. So I'm going to suggest these two moves: queen to c, queen takes, rook to e8. But we need one more move, so I'm going to just put queen check, queen to d4. So queen to d4. Yeah, so queen to d4. Okay, so queen to d4. That's interesting. That was the last move that was on my mind. And I will have not played it, definitely. I definitely will have not played queen to d4. But we're going to look at if this was the best move eventually. So stay till the end to see if the moves that I was guessing were right. Right? So queen to d4 check. And I feel like he's going to take queen to d4. Move 26. Move 26. So move 26. Move 26. Yeah, I knew he was going to take queen takes, queen x, e4, and I think it's going to be normal to just take with the rook. Yeah, rook takes d4, because we don't want to take with the pawn. We're going to lose another pawn. Rook x d4. Right, and now he attacked that. I saw that coming, and that was what I was confused about. That was mainly what I was confused about, because if he attacks that, okay, move 27, bishop goes back to c2, and now we can go rook to e8. So rook to e8. That's no, rook to e8 is an option. Rook e8. That's the only move I can see to protect the pawn, actually. If we go rook to d, if we go rook to d2, you can just go rook to f2. I think it's a forcing move to go rook to e8. So, but let's see. Yeah, rook to e8, and then move 28. He plays pawn to b3, right? So b3, then what are we going to play? Oh, sorry, Yeah, that was my bad. Okay, I was not supposed to click. Okay, so well, since we've already seen it, we're going to just look for two other moves, right? So rook goes there. I think I know the idea. It's very simple. So instead of rook going there, okay, I just know the idea. So it means that it was a move that we will have definitely spot. So rook to e5, right, was played, but the alternatives are rook to e7, rook e7. The major reason is just, I think, to go knight to e8 and then there, right? But why leave a pawn on a hanging, like a rook on a hanging square? So e4, e5 was a very good square also, because it also protects this pawn over here, I guess. So I think rook e2, rook e7 is okay, or rook e5. Anyone is going to be okay, or rook e5, or rook e5. And let's see if there's one more move. I'm thinking of maybe going pawn to h5, but that might not, this might not be the right time of going pawn to h5. So we already know the move that he played, which is rook to e5, and then he played there. So that, okay, pawn to h5 low key might actually have been good. Yeah, pawn to h5 might have been good right here. So I think the three moves that I suggested were right. So pawn to h5, and the idea is that now he wouldn't have had this move, right? So that was why actually I was thinking of pawn to h5. And if you're trying to attack, then we just play this move. Okay, yeah. Pawn to h5 was also a very good move. Now, rook here, and he played g4. So he played g4. This is move, this should be move 29. g4. So after g4, what are the moves that come into mind? Yeah, the major reason I guess that move was played was to bring back the knight. So firstly, I'm going to suggest going knight to e8, because it's a very typical thing when you're okay, yeah, that h5, okay, it's now actually see your message, Vegati. So but knight to in this position right now, knight to e8, knight to e8, and then knight to knight to d6 is going to be a possible move. But I'm also seeing something. I'm seeing pawn to e3, right? Pawn to e3 is an alternative, because we're attacking his pawn right now, and how can he protect it? By going h3. But then we can now go rook to d2. Yeah. Okay. We have d8 and then to g7. No, why? Okay, knight. Wait, are you talking of knight to d8 and then to g7? Knight. Are you talking of e8 and then g7? Sorry, yeah, knight e8 and then knight g7. But what is the knight going to be doing there? Okay, trying to go. But the thing is that, okay, yeah, that's an idea, right? Knight e8 and d7, because eventually you play h5, but I feel like that's going to be a little bit too slow, right? I feel like that's going to be a little bit too slow. So but I'm looking at yeah, so knight e8 is definitely an option. Me, I was looking at knight to e8 and then knight to e8 and then knight to d6, trying to protect the pawn. But right now I'm also looking at pawn to e5, pawn to e3, sorry. So pawn to e3 is an option because we're going to be directly attacking the pawn, and after you protect the pawn, we're just going to go to rook to d2, and it's going to be a very, very interesting position. Very interesting position. So let's see what happened. Knight e8. Okay, knight e8 was what happened. Knight e8. That was what I would have definitely gone with, but it's just good to look at other options. So move 30. Yes, the knight e3 makes sense also. Okay. Well, let's see. White plays pawn to h3. White plays pawn to h3, and yeah, knight d6. The idea, knight to d6 is better than knight to g7, right? So knight to d6 is better than knight to g7. Well, it's still an option, So it's still going to be part of my options, knight to d6, knight to g7. We're going to consider it when we're doing the analysis also. So knight to g7, and what other move is going to be here? We can actually even start moving the king forward. Probably like, let's say king up to c7. So I'm just doing this because I have to write at this three moves. So king to c7. Okay, yeah, and that's actually true, because it might, knight to g7 might be right, but we have not what's the name, this is like, I've not analyzed the position, so I don't even know if this is a game from an actual like grandmaster. This was a grandmaster game, I forgot their names, but it's like, it's from a 2000 game in 2000, like 1999 or 2000, I think, about there. It's from Olympiad, so but it's just half the Caro-Kann, and that's why I'm looking at it. So let's see. Yeah, knight to d6 was played. After knight to d6, king goes to f2. So move 31, king goes to f2. So I am strongly in support of black's position, but the position is actually equal, materially speaking, because if you look at the pawns and everything is equal. But that was why also I would have preferred maybe pawn push earlier, because now the king, and but maybe the idea was that if we go pawn push now, he can double attack by going rook to f3. So maybe that was why that didn't work. Right. Oh, sorry, I was not supposed to do this. Well, okay, again. So so after king to f2, we've already seen what was played, which is e3 check. Right, e3 check. Why e3 check? Oh, okay, yeah. Okay, so there's a very good tactics coming up here. There's a very good tactics that will come up if e3 is played. I'm guessing you might say, so if e3 is played, I check. If he decides to take with the rook, then you do a check. Okay, yeah, if he moves the king, then you take, and then if the king takes, then you take the rook. But I just saw that after check, if you go here, and if you do a check, oh no, check. If he takes with the rook, you can actually do a check and win the bishop, because the rook can't go back. Yeah, so you either win, yeah, you're definitely going to win the bishop. The idea is to win the bishop, sorry. So so after e3 check, so e3 is a possible move here, but let's see if there's another good move. Yeah, e3 looks like almost the only move there. It's actually very good here. Maybe playing h5 is also possible. So I'm going to write e3, I'm going to write h5, because h5, if pawn takes, then you get the pawn on f5, and you're also developing your knight to a very good square. So well, let's see. Yeah, so after e3 check, king moves up. He saw that he can't take, and yeah, so king to f3. King to f3. Okay, so Mohammed said that this variation is a little bit it's a difficult variation for black. I've not even actually practiced this variation. The line I play against this is usually attacking the knight by going bishop to f4. Sorry, bishop to f5 after knight captures on e4. So, but that's like, I think, the classical variation, right? So, but this variation also is a little bit based on the research that I've done. Most people actually say this variation is better, but I feel like it's more difficult when you're in it's more easier like in the master level, not in, let's say, if you're a player below 1500, it might be a problem, because you might basically be playing almost always down a pawn because of that double pawn structure that you have. So yeah, so let's see. Yeah, this variation is definitely more simpler than the classical variation. I strongly agree with that. It's more simpler. So but after this, what are the moves that we can play now as well as black? Let's see. Yeah, rook still goes there. Oh, pawn push looks good. Okay, but okay, pawn to pawn to e2, pawn to e2, or rook to f4 right away. Right. Rook to f4 right away. I feel like pawn to e, because if you capture the pawn, then you do a check, and then you win the rook for free. And I'm also okay. Yeah, pawn to. I'm looking at pawn to e2. It's an option. I'm just going to write it down. Pawn to e2. I'm also looking at rook to f4, right? Pawn to e2, rook to f4, and I'm also looking at rook to. Oh, I'm also looking at this h5 and this rook to d2. Rook d2. What about exf6 instead of gxf6? That, which position are you talking about? Let's take it back. exf6. Okay, yes. Okay, are you talking about the like in the beginning? Yes. exf6 is actually what I want to learn, right? This variation is actually very complicated. Sorry, yeah, this variation is actually very complicated, but it's played a little bit more in the it's played a little bit more in the like master level, but this is outdated. Actually, this is outdated. We're just analyzing the game to look at ideas, right? This is not what I'm going to definitely choose. This is not what I'm going to definitely choose. I'm going to either choose e times d5, sorry, e times f6 when I'm like trying to play this. So after this check, the king comes here. We've written down the possible moves that we are looking at. So we're looking at either pawn to e2, rook check to f4, or rook to d2, attacking the bishop, right? Yeah, rook check, rook to f4 was played, rook to f4. That was the second move I suggested. And move 33. He goes back to definitely, yeah, goes there. I'm thinking of maybe knight to e4 now. Knight to e4 looks good, actually, very good. Knight to e4 looks good, actually. Knight to e4. The idea is that if he takes the pawn, then you have a discovered check and you win the rook. So, but knight to e4, and if he takes the rook, then you take this way, or you can even do a discovered check first of all and then take, and you have a double pass pawn. And all you need to do is to bring your rook up. So knight to e4 is going to be part of my suggestion. So after king to e2, then knight to e4. So say knight e4 is my suggestion. Another suggestion is just taking the rook. But taking the rook looks a little bit too slow. We could actually, okay, no, going back to d4 is not very good also. Because going back to d4, what if he just brings his rook? Or if he brings his rook, okay, yes, you're right. So if knight goes to e4, there's bishop times there. Bishop times. There's bishop times actually, yeah. And so knight e4, but knight e4 still looks good. If bishop times, then maybe rook times, rook on e times, right? Or no, yeah, maybe rook on e times. If you, I just feel like leaving the rook there is okay. It's not completely bad. Knight e4. Okay, let's see. Let's see, rook takes f1 is another move. Rook takes f1 is another move, and then the last candidate move is going to be yeah, but going back to d4, is also a move, but I feel like going back to d4, what if he plus blocks by going rook to d1? What if he just blocks by going rook to d1? That's also something that can happen. So okay, let's see. Okay, rook d4 was what the guy played. Rook d4. Move 33, move 34. Rook d4 was what he played. And that was my last option. That was my last option. But yeah, he played that move, and I think it's not bad at all. So rook to d1, and what is black going to play now? What's black going to play? Probably can, what's the name? He can take, no, taking is going to be bad actually. Now can he go knight to d4? Knight to e4, sorry. This knight is now looking useless at some point. the knight is looking a little bit useless, but let's see. Knight to e4. Still can't take the pawn. And if he takes, then we take with the rook. Right? The question is that his next move is going to even be rook. Okay, g7, there will have been h5. Yeah, I think you make some points here. Okay. So let's see, knight to e4 is an option. Then rook takes is an option. Rx d1, and then king. I think moving the king up also is an option. Moving the king to, let's say, c7. But I don't even see, like, what is going to be the plan in this kind of position, Seth? But we know that we have a pass one, and the pass one is very difficult to protect. And I don't even know if the computer is saying if this position is a draw or not. But I just feel like black has an advantage, just maybe a slight advantage. This position might just be like maybe minus 1.5, something like that. Okay, so let's see what they played. Yeah, he took. This was the second option, Rx d1, and black took. Sorry, white took move 35, Rx d1. So we are up. We're at the end game now. So you can see how we eventually get out, or we got out of the opening, and now we're in the end game. I think now rook king to c7 will be played. Definitely king to c7. So, but yeah, let's just write that because our knight is hanging. So king to c7. Knights cannot go to e4. Knights cannot go to f4 also. And I think now, okay. Yeah, this knight is a very bad knight. This knight is, oh, even the bishop too is a bad bishop. Even the bishop too is a bad bishop. But let's see. Even the bishop too is a bad bishop. So king to d7, king to c7 is an option. King to d7 is an option. King to d7, but I don't want to just get pinned right now. What will be the last move? Let's just see. Yeah, king to c7. It looks like a forcing move. King to c7 and move 36. King goes to f3. I was thinking he's going to play. Oh, okay. If he goes to d3, I was thinking he was going to play rook to d3. So, but if rook goes to d3, then we have knight here. I think that was why he didn't want to play that. Then we can do a check after he has taken. Okay, shuffle pawn. Okay, so king to f3. Maybe he wants to attack from behind. And this move also stops our knight from coming in. So how is he going to get away with this position? We were thinking of maybe h5, but now h5 is not even going to work again. h5 doesn't work again because h5 pawn takes. Even if the knight takes, bishop takes, rook takes, then he takes the other pawn, and then the position is still equal because you're still eventually going to have to take the other pawn, and it's going to be 2 against 1 and 3 against 2 there. But black might still have a little bit of advantage. But let's see. Let's see. Oh. So I'm looking at also pawn attacks rook. If rook goes back, yeah, this position is complicated. Should we just accept to draw or like? And if we lose that pawn now, we're the ones losing. That's the thing. If we lose the pawn on e3, we're going to be losing the game. You can see how risky chess is. Like you decide to throw in all that. It's like you're putting all your hopes on one single pawn, and then you lose the pawn, and then you start crying. Because just imagine this was like a tournament game now, and you spend like, let's say 1 or 2 hours on this particular position, and eventually you now lost the game because you lost the pawn, right? So what we need to come up with a very good plan. That's the major thing. So okay, yeah. So let's just go. I'm just going to write e4, e2. I don't see any plan that saves the pawn or does something interesting. So I'm going to write e4, sorry, e2, and then I'm going to write king up again, king to c. Oh, okay, we can move. Okay, no. I was thinking of moving the king now to, let's say, b6, then a5, then b4. But he could just play pawn to a3, and that stops all our plan. We can't even go king to b6 because our knight is hanging. What am I even saying? So is there any way we can reroute? Oh, what if we go knight back to f, knight to d, knight to c6, and then knight to knight? That's going to take a long time. So there. No. So I don't. The only move that is on my mind is e2 right now, and e2 still loses the pawn because the rook just goes behind, and then he eventually captures. So maybe h5 also. So h5 will be another option. h5 will be another option. Okay, rook just went back. Maybe the idea is trying to reroute. Okay. Rook to e7. e7. Yeah, I know that that's the next move coming. And that's the problem. I know that that's the next move coming, but I don't know like what is going to be the best move. So rook goes to e1, rook goes to e1. After rook to e1, then it's black's turn to play. Yeah. So I feel like the reason he went back was just to try and develop his knight a good square. Right? Okay. So the first move that's coming to my mind is knight to f7. So if black can exchange rooks, he can push to win because the black knight is more powerful than the white bishop. Okay, that's a very good point from Mohammed. If black can exchange rooks, so you're saying we should just like go probably like knight f7, and if he takes, then we take, then the position is going to be draw. But it's okay. It's a little bit. Let's see the. Well, okay, knight f7 is the only move that I'm looking at that makes sense in this position. That makes sense, yeah. Or king to c6, king c6. But let's see. Yeah, knight f7 was played. Knight f7. Let's move 38. Move 38. He took the pawn. Rx e3, right? Rook takes pawn, and then knight. Wait, he dang it. Okay, yeah. So in this position, we'll just write the moves. Now, Mohammed was saying that we should have taken the rook on e3, but taking the rook on e3, it's an option, right? But I feel like if we should take the rook on e3 now, we're down a pawn, right? It's okay. You have a point here. It might be a draw actually if you take the rooks on e3, because all we just need to do is to get our pawns on dark squares, and if we get our pawns on dark squares, we're guaranteed of a draw. But I think white is trying to fight for a win here, but I think this position is actually draw right now. But a better chances of fighting is going to be if the better chances of fighting is going to be if the knight is still in the game, right? Because if you just exchange rooks, bishop has no, yeah, you're right, the bishop is completely useless. But I think there might be an easy grind, but there's not going to be any way for the king to penetrate and for both kings to penetrate if white plays very carefully. So, but let's see. So now in this position, we already saw what happened. Knight went to e5, and that's one option I would have considered also. And rook takes on e3. Rook takes on e3 is another option, and yeah, and moving the rook to safety doesn't make sense because we just get attacked and we lose this pawn immediately, something like that. But those are the only two major moves that are here, and he played this and king went back. Okay, this is move 39. The king went to e2. King going to e2. And king going to e2, we can still go back. Knight to c6 is an option. Knight c6 is an option. Knight c6 is an option. Trying to go check and do a fork, right? But exchanging pieces is not going to get any of us anywhere. If once we exchange pieces, we're definitely losing this game. So that's what I feel. So in this position, maybe I'm also going, aside knight c6, I'm going to consider maybe a5. I'm starting to think that Mohammed was actually right, because exchanging the rooks will have been much more safer for black. But now the black is down a pawn. Okay, he needs to play very precisely. So this is basically an endgame of a good bishop versus, sorry, a good knight versus a bad bishop, right? And there's definitely going to be a lot that we're going to learn from here if we look at the position. So knight c6, right? a5 is an option, right? And those are the only possible moves I'm looking at. Also h5, because if he takes, then you just go rook h7, and you take, and then you have an open file for your rook aside d. Yeah. Okay, what of rook to d7 just to take the open file, and then white can not contest. And then we can go knight to c6. The problem is that if we go rook to d7 and move on knight to c6, okay, that's actually a good idea. That's actually a good idea. So rook to d7 also is another move. So we're going to look at this move, rook to d7, when we're done. We're almost done. When we're done with it. So, but let's see what they played. Remember, this is a Grandmaster game, so the game is not going to end in a very cheap blunder that, let's say, people my rating usually make. So both of them are still going to fight for their lives. And black might think he's winning actually here, but the position might actually just be a draw. So you can never actually know. Bruh. Rook d7. Okay. But then there's rook to e6. Okay. No, rook to e6, there's going to be a fork. I saw like rook here, rook to e6, there's going to be a fork. If we go knight to c6 and he goes rook to e6, then we have a real fork. We're forking all the pieces, forking the rook, forking the king, forking the bishop. Everything is being forked. After this move, white played bishop there, bishop to e4. So move 40, bishop to e4. After bishop to e4, what are the moves for black? Black's position is kind of cramped. I'm thinking of this position might eventually end in the zigzag. So the moves I'm looking at is either rook to d4, rook d4, right, or pawn to a4. Still a5 in this position. No, a5 is not good again. So pawn to pawn to a5 is still good. Pawn to a5, rook to d4, or maybe our knight is more powerful here. Definitely. But what do you think is going to be the last move that might be good here? Both of the kings are actually not doing anything, and I just feel like it's about time we actually develop the kings to a much more better square. But let me see. Okay, so rook to d4. Rook to d4 or a5 are the only moves that come into my mind. Yeah, rook to d4 was played. Rook to d4. And then move 41. White played bishop to d5. Bishop to d5, interesting. Now we have nothing to worry about our pawns or about the bishop attacking. Yeah. H5 is not very good though, because h5, if pawn takes, then now because the bishop is on d4, now the bishop can go all the way back to f4, f3, protecting both of the pawns, and then we're going to be down 2 pawns. Don't forget we're already down the pawn, so giving up another pawn is going to be risky, right? But it might be actually good. We don't know. So but when we reach the position, we're going to look at h5 also. Oh wow, okay, thank you for that valuable tip. Thank you for that valuable tip, Mohammed. You're actually very, very right, because now I see, because I was also analyzing another game before this, I think a day before yesterday, and this was the same pawn structure that black had, and he didn't touch the pawn. So I was like, why wouldn't he play pawn? Usually when I get to a particular position, and I like don't know what to play, I just push the pawn, just try to lock the pawns. But that is actually bad, because I actually played some games whereby I played pawn to a5, which looked like a normal move, but it was actually a very bad move. And I actually don't used to know why pawn to a5 is bad, but now I think I have an idea why pawn to a5 is bad, because the king. But what the problem is that if you eventually exchange all the pieces and pawn goes to a3, how can the king now eventually penetrate? That's like the major question. So after bishop to d5, what are the possible moves for black? Yeah, our rook is now looking stuck. Maybe king to d6. King to d6. King to d6. Pawn to h6. Just playing a waiting move to see what black will do, or white will do. I feel like this position is drawn I feel like the position is drawn h6, but maybe king to b6 to go with plan that you said. But I don't want to leave the king out. We don't want the rook to penetrate in any way. So, but let's just put king to b6. Let's not waste much time. H5. H5. Like, why H5? H5 makes the position a little bit imbalanced, actually. H5. Okay. So H5, H5 was not even part of the moves I suggested. So 40, 41, 42. H5. Okay, yeah, you're right. But my problem is that I don't want his rook. If this knight moves, leaves that place, the rook is going to enter our side, and if the rook enters our side, then like it's going to be a little bit of like, it's going to be a little bit of a problem. Or let me see. Okay. So let's see. What is he going to play? He takes g takes g x h5, and now you're saying we should go rook to h4, right? So rook h4 is that's an option. Rook h4 is an option. That's the only option I see. Yeah, we need to get. But what if he protects from the bottom? What if he okay? No, he cannot protect from the bottom. This knight is there. Yeah, rook h4 is like the only move that is good here. Rook h4. 42, 43, and then what is going to happen? So white plays what? Oh, whoa! There's rook to c7. Yes, you're right. Crazy chess. Okay. There's rook to c7. There's rook to c7. Yeah, that focuses the king definitely. I know what the fuck he's doing. So bishop to f7, and let's see. Knight takes, knight x f7 definitely. 43, 44. Rook x f7, and the question is, sorry, wait. Knight x f7, then rook to e7 check. Rook e7 check. And the question is, where are we going to move with our king after this check? Do we attack the rook? Then we go to b6, and this is the kind of position that just one move is going to cost you the game, bruh. So well, I think the candidates moves here are king d6, right? King b6, and those are the only moves that come into my mind. So but yeah, black in the end, black allows white to come in. That's the only way you could have won. But if it was me, I would have actually just settled for a draw, for lie, because I'm down the pawn. I'm down the pawn, and I don't want to lose, so I would have just definitely settled for a draw. Definitely. King went to d6, and after king to d6, 44, 45, then what's the name? Rook times knight, rook x f7. Then what can black play now? Okay, so you say if v6, then rx f7 threatens what? We can't go to b6. Okay, yeah, definitely we can't go to b6. The first move that I had was d6, but that's the only other move that might be possible, but even though it's bad still. But now we can actually go. Oh, I think we have two pass pawns now. We can go to e6, e5, but this position is crazy. So king e5. Or we can just capture rook h5, rx h5, or rx h3, rx h3. But I think in this position the best move is going to be, I like king to e5. I want to have two pass pawns. I like king to e5. How are you sure it's the only good move? Would it be? How are you sure it's the only good move? King to e5 is not the only good move. We can capture. Yeah, king to e5. But I feel like he's going to swipe both pawns, like from. What if he does a check? Okay, we capture the pawn. So king to e5. Rook c, yeah, rook c7. So rook to c7. Then king takes, I guess. King takes, definitely. Wait, rook takes? Wait. I'm definitely going to look at this position. King x. Okay, king taking might be slow because now we can just start pushing the pass pawn. Okay. King x f5 is an option, right? Rook takes h3 or rook h5 is another option, right? So he played rook x h3. Guy, so I'm confused. Like I'm confused. Like why will he go rook to h3? This must be like there must be a problem with rook h3. Well, rook takes on h3 45. 46. After rook takes h3, he's going to take the c pawn definitely. Rxc, rxc5, a5 check, and I think now we can go one step, so we can do a check. I guess that's the plan, right? Just one step up. So king to e4. King to e4 is an option. Or king to d5. King to d4 rook check is going to just be bad. So king to d4. e4, still attacking the pawn on f if the rook ever decides to go down. But why do I feel like this is bad? King to e4 is just or king to f4. King to f4 is also good. King to f4. Yeah. Trying to protect the pass pawn as it's going to promote into a queen. So the king to e4 was played though. 47. Yeah, this is a very interesting game. Black is down the pawn. Black won this game actually. So I'm fascinated to see how the game is eventually going to, like, I'm interested in seeing how the game is eventually going to end. King to e4, right? 47. Pawn to. Okay, so definitely the king is going to see that he wants to be checked, so he's going to probably move to f2. Oh, rook just goes to c. rc 6. Then we just capture the pawn on f. Oh god. Okay. Let's take it back. Yeah, let's take it back. So after rook to c6, king f5 is an option. Rook h2. Okay, yeah, rook h2 first. Rook h2 first before capturing the pawn, because that takes the king back. Yeah, I like it, and it's also still attacking the other pawn. Yeah, smart. Okay. Yeah, those are the two options, and rook h2 check was played with 48. Black is definitely winning this game, but it's still very difficult. It's still very difficult to convert. I'm very sure if I set this position up against you, you're going to lose. You're still going to lose this game if I set it up against you. You want to bet in the blitz game. So 47, 48. After check, king to e1, king to e1, and then I think now king takes f5. But let's see, king x f5 is an option. Another option would be yeah, I think that's the only good move here. Yeah, that's the only good. If this guy play another move, I'll be confused. g4. But g4, he can just take the pawn. g3, and the rook goes behind g6. So rook x f5, g4. Okay. I definitely not now. Not on the hand. Because me, I'm confused. Yeah, king takes f. King x f5. And 49. 49 is going to be rook to a6. So rook to a6. Then I think now g can happen. Now g4 can happen. G4. So my options are g4. Another possible move is just going king up. Or rook takes. Anyone is okay, but king up. No, king up loses the pawn on f. So g4 is only the correct move that I'm seeing here. So let's say g4. Rook x h5. But we're still going to look at g4 in this position. We're still going to look at g4. I'm very sure that g4 was okay. 49, 50. So we had moved 50. 17 more moves to go. If you've been here from the beginning, well done. Because yeah, this is what it means. This is why they say studying chess is not easy. It's just very difficult. So g4, so move 50. Move 50. So after rook times, then rook x a7. X a7. So it's 3 pawns against 3 pawns against 2 pawns. But what are the chances that black is going to win? Bruh, like, okay, maybe because of the position of the king. Now rook goes back to g2, I presume. It's an option. Rook g2 is an option. Pawn g4 is an option. G4 is an option. Or king to f4 is an option. But I think the best thing to do is just start pushing pawns. Pawn to g4. Yeah, rook g8. Wait, did I say g8? Sorry, g2. I wrote g2. Rook h2, not g2. So rook h2. Yeah, rook h2 was played. G4 also will have been. Okay, no, rook h2 I think is best to lock the king up at the edge of the board. But g4 I feel like will have been okay. So move 51. c5. I think g4 is going to be played now. This endgame is, that's why they say endgame is the most difficult part. Now I'm a little bit moving too fast than I'm supposed to be moving. But I feel like g4 g4 g3 in this position. I'm not going to even be surprised if king to g6 is played. Somebody's asking what's my rating. My rating is like my rating is 2200 and like 50 something. So probably getting. I've been trying to get to 2-3 for some time now, but I'm still stuck there, I guess. So that's why I'm doing this study. So because Caro-Kann, like I've been having difficulties playing the Caro-Kann as black, so I want to look for try like a way that I can improve or something. Yeah, rook attacking c2 is also an option. So rook c2 is an option. Okay, thanks, Sim. Rook c2 is an option. G4 is an option. And king f4 is an option. King f4. So, but yeah, rook c2 was played, and that's my first option. Rook c2. The 52. Do you know what this means? Like, this is like going for, what is the best way to explain? This is like Greek sky. Like, just imagine that drone position and ending up in this position as black, and you still think you're winning. Like, this is bold. So rook is definitely going to have to protect the pawn. Okay, pawn protects b4. b4. And then I think now is definitely the time to play it. Definitely now has to be the time to play g4. So, but g4 is what I'm going to say. King up also is still an option. King to f4. King to f4, but I'm very sure what king to f4 was played. 52, 53. King to f4 was played instead. So well, let's see. King to f4. So king to f4. I have no idea why the grandmaster played this, but that was my second option. King to f4. Now rook to a6. Rook to a6, and then definitely pawn to f5. Definitely pawn to f5. So f5, and 53, 54. Pawn to c6, pawn to c6. Guessing g4, right? Yeah, g4. Finally, the g4 move has been played. g4 and 55. b5. b5. I'm guessing now now black is losing. Oh wait, black has a check actually in 2 different squares. Well, I'm guessing g3 is played here, but let's write the moves. g3 is possible. And that's the only move I'm saying. g3. Okay, 56. g3. King probably goes to f1. Okay, no, rook check. Rook a4. Okay, king goes to f1 instead. So king f1. After king f1, I'm thinking of pawn check. Okay, so what can black play here? This position is dicey, like very dicey. Because I'm looking at rook to b2 now. Like rook b2, like okay, trying and get his pawns first. Because he's going to be way too distracted trying to capture, trying to stop you from queen. But I'm also seeing pawn check onto g2 check. g2 check, and those are the 2 moves I'm saying. Any move again might just be a waste of time, or king to g4. Yeah, king to g4. The reason is probably trying to go behind g4, king to g4, then king to g4, then king to h3. So that's what I'm looking at. Well, let's see what is going to happen. So rook to c3. Trying to stop the check. Ooh. But what if king goes up? I think the only move for white is going king to g2. So move 57. Yeah, king to g2. And I think black is going to want to go back to do a check. Yeah. Oh, okay. I was thinking this move was bad because if he goes check, then the king has to move back. But I forgot that there's pawn to f4. Okay. So king to g4. Right? And then move 58. King to g4, move 58. White plays pawn to c. Why? This move should be a blunder. c7. Yeah, we just take, do a check first. Okay. R c2, and then king has to definitely go back, and then you take rook times c6. So move 59, king goes to f1 and rook to c7. Rook to c7. So move 60, he did a rook check. Rook g6. Rook g6. I think white is losing now. King to f3. Yeah, king to f3, and then move 61. King to f3, and then rook goes back to c. This is very complicated. This game is very. Oh, then we go to e7. No, not e7. Why not e7? Threatening mate. Well, he goes check. So rook to c6, rook to d7, and then move 62. Rook check, definitely. Rook c3, the king has to go back to g4. King g4, and 63. Pawn to b6. b6. I think in this position now, pawn to f. Okay, which kind of position is this? I think rook check. Oh. Yeah, rook check. So rook to d1. Move 64. King. I was thinking king is, if king attacks the rook, it's losing because pawn push, so sacrificing the rook. So king to g2. King to g2. And then king to g2, and then I think we can go rook check on d2 again, or play that. Spawn to f4. f4, and this is game over because we're now going to go to h3 after check. So 64, 65. Rook to c4 and rook to d2 check. King goes back to g1. 66, king to g1, and then king to h3. I think this was where king didn't go to h3. Rook to b3. Okay, so rook to b3 was played. Rook to b3, but I think king to h3 is still okay. King to h3 is still okay. Well, And then this is the final position, guys. So this is where guy resigns. So let's do a review of the game and see. Let's do a review of the game and see where the guy, like, so the question is, where did the guy even make mistake? Black actually played well in this game. So where did white make the mistake from? I think it was towards the end, because I am very sure, like, for most of the time, like, even, well, it was, black was just tricky in this game. Definitely just tricky in this game. Black was just tricky. So well, let's see. So going to flip the board. How do I flip the board? Okay. All right. So well, let's see. So he played the Caro-Kann, white played the classical variation. Sorry, yeah. We played the Nf6 variation, and we took with the G pawn. After this, bishop to f6, bishop to f5, sorry, knight f3, knight develops, castles, bishop goes back, and this move, right, just not very good from white, and black played this move. Right, so we almost had move 10. So 0-0 is move 10. So it was from here that we started looking at the position, and now I'm going to still grab my book. This was like, can you see? This is like almost 1. This is, yeah, no. This is 1, this is 2, and this is 3. So this is where I started this game. This is where I started this game, and this is all the analysis I'm going to do, and I'm going to have to look at it. But let's see. So at move 10. Was it queen b6, knight b6, or queen d5? That's for black. That's for black. So, but how I wish I can actually flip this board. Right. Okay, so we said yeah, queen b6. Queen to b6, right? Yeah, queen to b6 was an excellent move also, right? Queen to b6 was right. Knight to b6 was what he played, which was the best move also. Well, all of them were okay, I guess. And then the last move was queen to d5. Queen to a5. This was because I just needed to find the move, but it was actually a good move. So you can see, I actually got 3 good moves, even though, yeah, in this position. So it means all my ideas were right a little bit. He went there, and move 11, it was either bishop to d6, knight to d5, or queen to d6. So bishop to d6. Okay, after this move, it's actually bishop to d6, right? This was the move that I was suggesting. Knight to d5, right? Or queen to e7. This is move on the queen to d7, sorry. So queen to d7 was the best move, and queen to d7 happened to be my last option. The strongest option was going bishop out, and it turns out bishop out isn't the best move, right? I also looked at a5, but I was like, maybe we're trying to castle long, but that was after, like, some while after. So I was looking at a5. So let's see. So this was what was played, and he played this, and at move 12 I was looking at queen to c7, right? Queen to c7, which I guess what was a blunder. Whoa. And that was actually my strongest, like, that was the move I was actually depending on. Queen to c7 was a blunder. Interesting. Queen to c7, queen to d7, or rook to g8, queen to d7. Any move with the queen is going to be bad. Rook to g8. Like, I would have just basically made a blunder in this, but wait, rook to g8 was right. This was my, I literally just made this, I literally just like suggested this because I just wanted to play something. But rook to g8 was okay. But we can see black is not having a very good position. It's this opening, like Mohammed said, is actually very, very tricky and very difficult to play. But let's see. So he took, which was the best move, right? And then white took. Then move 14, knight to d5. I knew this move was wrong. Yes, my instinct was right, because knight to d5 is just a problem. I thought of h5 in this move. This is move 12, right? Let's see. This is move 13. So move 13, my moves were 0-0, like just castling. Right, just castling. No. Wait, going there is okay. The castling is excellent. Then the second option was queen to e7. Queen to e7. This was also excellent. And then the third move was rook to g8. Yeah, all of the moves I suggested were actually very good. Nice. And he made an inaccuracy, which means that I'm better than the GM. Yeah. Okay. So he played knight there. I just knew this move was wrong. And white was actually supposed to capture, I feel like. White was actually supposed to capture the knight. But let's see what happens. So capturing the knight was not good. Oh, it stops from castling. So I think that was why the move was not good, because it stops from castling. Yeah. And after this, black played queen to e7. This was my strongest move in this position. I like queen to e7. Boy, it was a mistake. Black is losing. So black won this game, not from the opening, but from the end game. So it turns out like this opening is not very good, but not the opening in general, like this variation. It's very risky, right? It's very risky to play because of like the pawn structure and all. Like it's very risky, but it's still something that you can. There are still some very good games with it. So I've looked at Nf6 games, and I think all of the games were very okay. So let's see now. This is move 14. So move 14, I was like queen d6, queen e7, rook g8, queen d6. I suggested queen d6. Yep, I played it. I'm actually okay. I don't want to say I'm better than him, but queen e7. I suggested this move also, but this was my second move, and then rook g8. Still suggested rook g8, but this was an inaccuracy. Still better than what he played. So well, the first move I suggested was queen d6, and that's actually the best move in the position. So c4 was played, and I went back there. That was forced, and then knight takes on g6 was the only move that works to keep the advantage. Interesting. Pawn took, forced again, pawn push. That was the best move, and in this position, castling was my last option. Move 17. Yeah, castling was my last option, but I like eventually saw that castling would work in this position. So, but castling cx, c times d5 or e5 also was possible. So let's see. So c times, I was looking at c times, but if c times, you can't castle, so it's going to be a mistake. We're definitely losing very well. So castling was definitely going to be the only move that was good. So after castles, he took, and white was winning here. I said earlier that I didn't like black's position somewhere around here, so I just knew that black was not doing very well, but we're just looking at it from the perspective of black, so definitely everybody will want black to win. But I just felt like this position was a little bit equal, but white definitely has a slight advantage. But black eventually ended up having a better knight against a better bishop endgame. That's why the position was much more better for white. So but let's see. Queen went to e3 and pawn push. Yeah, this position, I knew it. Yeah, I knew this move was just a little bit awkward, but this is move 19 to move 19, black. Yeah, I suggested king to b8, knight to a6, or knight to e8. The king, I suggested king to b8, which will have been a mistake. Okay, and I suggested knight to e8, which will have also still been a mistake. Okay, and then if I probably had this position, but let me see, knight to a5, knight to a6, Yeah, king to b8 was my first option. That means I will have definitely made a mistake in this position. So, but yeah, why is king to b8 a mistake? Why is king to b8 a mistake in this position? Because bishop goes here, attacking the pawn, and what if we eventually push the pawn forward? Oh, then he breaks, and now we're going to open up our king side for a very, very huge attack. Okay, so that's why. So after this, the rook came here, which lost all the advantage in the position. Can you imagine? The rook to d1 lost all the advantage in the position. So rook to d1 shouldn't have been played by white. Instead, bishop back, and you can see rook to d1 kind of like made the bishop a little bit passive in the game, because the bishop didn't have anything. So I was thinking rook to b1 was to either go here, because if we eventually play this move, then he has this outpost also, but he brings his rook eventually also into the game, and that will have been very, very good for him. So I guess that's why. So after this move, we played this move, and that was my #1 top move in this position. Pawn to e5. Let me see. This is move 20. Move 20, pawn to e5. Okay, no, yeah, move 20, pawn to e5 was my top suggestion, and white kept on losing all the advantage he had by playing this. But I thought this move was actually good. I really thought this move was good. I really thought this move was good, but after pawn to f4, yeah, and he played pawn push, which was the best move. I saw this coming, and I played this move, but I said, like I said, when I played this move, I was like, I might be wrong, but it looks like something that is a little bit good. But let's see. Yeah, he made the wrong move. So wait, in this position, okay, taking would have been good also, but we played this. He came here, which was a mistake, trying to do a discovered attack, and we played this. That was the only move. And here, and we came here. So I think in move 24, rook d3 was my first move, attacking the queen. That would have lost the game. Dang it. Okay, just move back. Why? But I thought after rook d3, if queen takes, he takes, then we have two pass ones. Oh, he attacks, and if we go here, king up, then no, sorry, king up, then we go pawn push. So how is this position winning for? No. Yeah, we go pawn push. Okay, he then attacks, and we go here, he then probably comes here to attack, and he's definitely winning the game. So he's going to eventually win the 2 pawns, but it's +1, so it's not +1, but we're definitely losing the game. So after this, okay, no, this is outside the variation. So yeah, so after this move, rook came here. The second move that I thought of instead of rook to d4 was rook to d2. Yeah, no. Or rook d3. No. Yeah. So I also thought of rook to d2 also. So I thought of this move also. And that would have actually been the best move. But that was the first. No. That was the second move I suggested. The second move I suggested was that. So so after this move, he goes there, and we decided taking was not the best option. We did check, but I suggested taking was the best option. Yeah, I suggested taking was the best option. This is move 25. Move 25, queen x c3, rook e8 for queen to d4. Yeah, I suggested queen to d4. I suggested this was the first move I suggested, and then the last move I suggested was this. So Oh, would have blundered the rook. Yeah, so definitely taking, I think, would have been much more better. Just doubling up his position and then coming here. That would have been good. Okay, so let's see. So after this, rook takes, the only move, rook here looks normal, and so knight back was, yeah, in this position, this is move 30. Flip the book. Knight d6. No, move 31. e3 was my, no, which move is this? Move 29. Knight e8 or e3. I strongly liked e3 in this position, and that would have actually been the best move, right? But this variation was also okay. So Begati was saying this would have been much more better, and you can see it's an inaccuracy. The knight is going to be a little bit inactive there at the end of the day. So instead of going knight to g7 to play this, is, I just felt like this is a little bit slow. That was why I didn't want to go here. So knight here was much more better. Your rooks belong in the center of the board, not at the edges of the board, right? So if you see that there's no eventually going to be any break and there's no any fast route that is going to get you back to the center of the board with your knight, then I don't think that, let's say, I don't think going to that side of the board is going to be something worth going. But after this, king goes up, which was an inaccuracy, and that move. Now, in this position, I strongly like this move. Yeah, mistake. Dang it. Okay. That was a mistake. A horrible mistake. Yeah. And the next move I liked was this. Was this. All of the moves are mistakes, so what would have been the best move? Knight going back. How? Okay. So after this takes king to c7, king to f3, there, and yeah, you can see this was move like, this was draw, and this was move 40. We were up to move 40 and the position was drawn. I knew this position was just completely drawn. So where did white make a mistake from? That's the question. We seriously thought black was winning. So Begati, can you see? Black wasn't winning. This is almost the end of the game. Black wasn't winning. I just knew the position was drawn. Black made a mistake somewhere. This position was dead draw. Black was even losing at some point. Black was losing. And white missed the opportunity. Wow. So the idea was attack. I knew that this move was wrong. Yes. This is move 53. Move 53. This is move 53. So I saw g4 before rook to c2. No, 52. Yeah, I saw g4, king to f4. G4. I knew g4 was right, but why was he now playing with his rook? He was scared, I guess, and he ended up having a losing position at the end of the day. So but even white didn't play this slick. There were lots of errors here, and black was just lucky. Black was just lucky towards the end game. So this is to show you that the end game is very hard, like very, very rook end game is one of the most difficult parts of the end game that you actually will need to learn if you want to actually improve in your chess game. But anyways, I think we're going to round off here. I need to go have some sleep. This is almost 3 a.m. So see you guys in our next stream tomorrow, probably by the same time. Bye bye.